Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Hockey Jerk, and tonight you are in for a treat. It is the return of the Teal Tinted Glasses podcast.
We
tonight.
are on a time limit, Hockey Jerk. Let's speed this up.
Hey, Kevin, Lacey, 22. Excuse me. Anyways, we have fighting in the blue corner. He just shaved his mustache, and he is the king of pronouncing Scandinavian hockey players' names.
And Jaden Halbgewachs.
Kevin Lacey.
Yes, it is I just shaved in the last 20 minutes, so this is weird. I haven't been clean shaven since October 1st. So yeah. Anyway, hi guys, we're back. Barracuda are winning 5-1. The Heat just scored, but it still says 5-1, so I don't know what happened.
And fighting out of the red corner, red for Canada, get it?
I get it.
He is the Maple Masher.
Oh, jeez.
He is the angry Canadian robot, Ian Reed.
I'm also sorry all the time.
Yes.
Just got to get that out there. Hey, welcome to Teal Tinted Glasses. It's been 2 weeks since our last show. Obviously, the Sharks back-to-backs on Friday, Saturday kind of crotch punched us last week. Speaking of being in corners and everything, we got kind of crotch punched by that. And the games weren't even worth watching. That's the worst part.
You know it is worth watching? This Barracuda game. But watch it after. This is Teal Tinted Glasses.
I have to say I'm getting tired of all these professional hockey games stealing our airtime.
No, right? I know. It's like, how dare you? We have a couple of prime nights where we can come in, do the show. I mean, if I was the Sharks, I would try and preempt this every night right now because there's not a whole lot of great to talk about there. And probably where we should start, I guess, because everything's kind of angry, and I want to get the anger out of the show. I want to get to the good part of the show where we're happy and we're not angry and we're not devising ways to get Peter DeBoer fired or launching some player to the sun that maybe a goalie or two at this point. I want to get past all that. So let's talk about this pile of garbage that has been this road trip. So far, only 1 point on the road trip. Not good, obviously. But I feel like what's more concerning here is that last show, if you rewind to last show, and I wish one of these days I'm going to get really good at this and I'll have like clips and I'll play them over again. I said that the Sharks should just ride the hot hand between Dell and Jones. And it seems like that's kind of happened. Like win and you're in, because every time someone loses, it seems like someone else goes in the net. The problem is now no one's winning. So I'm an idiot, clearly, and Peter DeBoer should stop listening to this show.
It begs the question, if no one is winning and no one is the hot hand, does that mean the Sharks should play games with no one in net?
They tried that with 5 minutes left today. It didn't work out.
Right. You try anything at this point, right?
Right. I don't know. I mean, I don't understand this team. And I think I have a question. I know my notes are all going to be jumbled up, but I have a question. Like, did the signing of Erik Karlsson inflate? Is it because Erik Karlsson got signed that our feelings on this team just got skewed or inflated? Because I'm starting to actually wonder that myself now. Where did I just get too overhyped by Erik Karlsson being here that I didn't see other holes in the lineup as big as maybe I should have? Where are you guys on that?
I don't think so, Ian, because to me, the rest of the team we were worried more about them being able to score goals. Defensively, they'd be fine. And when the Sharks added Erik Karlsson, it was, okay, they might be a little less steady defensively now, but they got significantly more offense from the back end.
Mm-hmm.
So the forwards still, can they score goals? But defensively, they should be fine. Instead, what we've had is the Sharks can score goals and they can't play defense unless they're down a man. It makes no sense. How can you have one of the best penalty killing units in the league and be so atrocious 5-on-5 and 4-on-4? Like they have, I said it on Teal Town USA today that they have the capability of playing defense, but why don't they? Why do they only pick to be down a man before they go, oh, maybe we should saddle up and try playing defense? I don't get it. That's, to me, is the big hole in the team.
I think too, like we've seen, in the last 2 years especially, we kind of saw this team was really good at stopping pucks, not so good at putting them in the net. And I think, and again, this is totally just, baseless speculation, but I almost wonder if they've began to trust the goalie more, whoever it is, by himself, and B, I wonder if they're trying to be more, I guess, more assertive, more playing with more jump when trying to score goals. And I think more aggressive. Yeah. And I think because of that, I think is why we're starting to see this just defensive lapse like you've spoken about. And I think it is kind of uncharacteristic too, because I feel like in years past, it has not been, out of the question to think that either Jones or Dell could steal a game for the Sharks. But right now, I think we could have both of them in net, and I'm not so sure that we would win.
That's a scary thought. But it is. I mean, I look at this lineup, and and again, I don't. I like some of the additions to it. Obviously, we knew going into the season, okay, well, they've got to replace Chris Tierney, and I really like Andy Somella, but I'm not sure that he's really done that. And I don't think anyone else has really been able to do that. And I'm not saying, oh, we should have never traded Chris Tierney for our Carlson, because that's just stupid talk. Like, that's not where I'm trying to go with this. Let's get that out of the way right now. I would do that again. I would do that trade 700 times and 707 on Sunday. Like, but there are problems, and I feel like the defense deserves a lot of the blame, but I feel like the forwards also aren't doing their part, and I feel like that is not getting mentioned enough. Like, it's easy to just bag on Burns for whatever, but I feel like the forwards aren't doing enough coming back to help on the defensive side of the puck.
Now, granted that I have only seen about 1/3 of the Sharks games this season, but of the games that I have seen, I feel like the forwards have been the only ones back in the defensive zone getting the puck. I've too many times this season, and we saw it on 3 goals by Ottawa today, where the defensemen were in the Sharks defensemen were in the offensive zone, and it was the forwards who were back. Why is that? And one of the games I went to, I think it was the Edmonton game. I think it was that game. Both defensemen had left the defensive zone before the Sharks had even gotten the puck out. Where is the structure here? To me, I do have to disagree with you on that. I think the forwards are doing their job, if not too much of the job of the defensemen, to where they can't do their own job as scoring forwards.
Yeah, I usually I try and find at least one, try and have an answer, and I'm really just watching. I'm really not sure what is going on. Like, I do agree. I think there has been some slack picked up defensively by the forwards, but at the same time, where they're picking up slack, somewhere else is lacking, and I think that's evident by the fact that it seems like in the last 2 weeks it's only Joe Pavelski who's scoring for the Sharks. It seems like it's been Kane's got 1 in his last 15, $7 million a year. Jonas Donskoy, who's supposed to be healthy, 1 in his last how many ever 10. Defense is definitely the problem. I'm not denying that at all, but at the same time, this team's offensive firepower is very lethal, and they should not be relying on the 34-year-old Joe Pavelski in a contract here to carry the boat.
Yeah. Or the combination of Joe Thornton and Marcus Sorensen. on the third line.
I will say, if you're looking for a little victory, that little chemistry that is slowly developed, I am all for it. I'll just say.
Oh no! Don't get me wrong. I'm not bashing it. I think it's great. I just think it's.
But
it's
you're right. We need more.
It makes me nervous though, because we've seen many players. I mean, look at Joe Thornton's not the Joe Thornton of 2007 or 2005, but I get nervous when you put a guy like Sorensen with Joe Thornton and they start to light it up, because I don't want to see the Sharks have to pay another guy for being Joe Thornton's wing when what happens when you take them off Joe Thornton's wing. I don't know. Maybe a problem for another day. Sharks have plenty of problems right now. Maybe that's not the most pressing, but things like that just make me nervous.
Yeah, I think with a guy like Sorensen, though, obviously the way he is a skater and, you know, is very hard player in the offensive zone, I think, you know, gives him
fighter.
Yeah, and a fighter apparently. I think that may increase his value away from Joe Thornton, but I agree. Like, you're gonna put, you know, whoever with Joe Thornton, and then they're gonna light the world on fire, and rightfully so. And then, you know, it's gonna be another contract that's handed out that may or may not work out the way that it's supposed to. And I'm almost certain that things are gonna get better, but it's still very nervous to think about right now, because there are teams who, again, game's not played on paper, but there are teams on paper who are theoretically worse than the Sharks that are doing better.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think that's the concerning thing, is that you look around the Pacific Division, and the Pacific Division is still really bad, but there's a couple teams that have really come on, Vegas being one of them. And I'm not so sure that this is just a flash in the pan Vegas team. This Vegas team starting to look a lot like the team that they were last year. And I don't think it's a coincidence that it kind of coincided with Nate Schmidt coming back to the lineup. I don't know. What are your guys' takes on Vegas?
Totally agree. Vegas is rolling right now. I also think that with Max Pacioretty finally finding his stride, he got a couple goals under his belt. We were hoping the Sharks would have that with Karlsson, where he finally had a fantastic game against Vancouver, and ever since, that's the last time we've had anything positive to say about the Sharks. But with Vegas, Pacioretty got a couple goals under his belt, and then all of a sudden it's just continued to roll, and the team's getting more confident. Because remember, this is kind of a new roster for Vegas.
Right.
Completely. They lost so many players from last year, and then perfectly said, Ian, about Nate Schmidt coming back. I mean, he really is the stabilizing force on their back end. As funny as it is to say, but yeah, Vegas is a team to definitely be considered a big threat in the Pacific. Maybe the only team right now that is considered to be a threat in the Pacific.
I think Calgary too.
Yeah, I think with Vegas, I think it's a situation where everything is starting to go well for them all at the same time. You know, like you said, Nate Schmidt obviously coming back helps. I mean, I would argue he's their best defenseman, and you know, it's essentially a free asset, quote unquote, because you started the season without him,
right?
And then, you know, like you said, Kevin, as well, Max Pacioretty heating up. I believe he's got 3 multi-goal games in his last 6 games.
There you go.
It's you know, when teams are scoring goals, it's good.
Right.
Goals win games, last I checked. But Marc-Andre Fleury as well. I mean, the three of us have all talked about how, you know, it seems like Marc-Andre Fleury's last good year has been like the last 5 years in a row. But
yeah,
every year he just keeps coming back. And I don't know how accurate this is now, but I do know that the game against the Sharks where they got obliterated, that was his 5th shutout of the year, and it's November, or now it's December, but it was
December,
November.
No, it's ridiculous. Wow. Like, he's been really good, and I just, you know, and I like Gerard Gallant. I think Gerard Gallant's a great coach, and
great coach. We're sorry we got you fired, but you're in a much better position now.
we did you a favor, Gallant.
Yeah.
We did you a favor. I mean, I don't want to go all over the place here, but there's something in the chat that kind of poked out to me. It's like a lot of talk about Peter DeBoer's history on other teams and how they declined. I mean, in New Jersey and Florida, the reason why I kind of was willing to give him the benefit of the doubt when he came here was in New Jersey. I mean, the year after they won, they went to the Cup final. They lost Parise and Kovalchuk and had nothing to replace them. Their team got monumentally worse with no reinforcements. Obviously, the results are going to dip. Florida, you could argue the same thing happened in Florida. Is that roster, the longer he was there, that roster got poor. Like it got worse.
Yeah.
That didn't happen here. I would still argue the roster, even if I did maybe overestimate the impact that Erik Karlsson would have on this team has gotten better the time that he's been here, yet the results aren't there. So that, I don't know. I mean, it's a puzzling thing, because before you could kind of excuse it, especially in New Jersey. I mean, what do you do when you lose Parise and Kovalchuk and have nothing to replace them? Like, you just, obviously it doesn't matter how good of coach you are. That team is going to suck the next year.
You just dig a hole and lay in it.
Right. But in this case, like, I'm not saying there's nothing to the declines on those teams that are other than personnel wise, but it's baffling to me how this is happening with a team that is better than it was maybe even 2 years ago.
Let me ask you this, and this is something that I have kind of observed and theorized on. I'm curious to know what you guys think. And Erik Karlsson, you think about his days in Ottawa, he's very much been that player who roams around, sort of just, throws caution to the wind and sort of does his business. And whether it's by DeBoer or by Wilson or whomever, I think he's played much more conservative with the Sharks. And I think the one instance that we got to see him sort of just fly around there like he's known for was in the game against Dallas, specifically the first period against Dallas. I'm curious to know if that's something you guys have noticed, or does it just seem business as usual?
I completely agree.
Yeah,
I don't think Erik Karlsson has looked comfortable getting used to Peter DeBoer's system, whatever that is. He's even said it in a press conference, I think this morning, that it's taken him a lot longer than he expected to get acclimated to the locker room vibe, the culture, and the coaching system. And I'm not saying that, it can't work, but I mean, man, for that kind of super, I guess in a way you can equate it to Sidney Crosby, how for a number of years they said, can anyone actually play with Sidney Crosby besides Chris Kunitz? Like, the Penguins have tried so many different players with him, and it, for whatever reason, doesn't work. And right now, I think the Sharks are having that with Erik Karlsson, because they've tried. I think Dylan and him have been okay. Vlasic and Karlsson hasn't worked as well as I'd hoped, and I still don't know why DeBoer puts Burns and Karlsson together. So unless power play makes sense, but right even strength, I just don't get it. So we're, because it's a contract year for Karlsson, we're running out of time here. It's weird saying 60 games left, but still, we're kind of running out of time here for Karlsson to get acclimated to things. And I don't buy the whole Gino Reda, oh, he's a cancer in the locker room, blah, blah, blah crap that he put out this week. But I do wonder why there is such a culture clash here with the Sharks, with Karlsson. And I don't even think that's the problem.
I don't think that's the problem either.
Some kind of culture clash, but I don't think it's Karlsson in them. But I think there is something there.
I think a big a big reason, I think, too, is you think about Ottawa, think about those teams. I mean, for the most part, I would say, he was in that locker room. He was the big dog, like he was the main guy. He very much set the tone for the room. And I feel like now coming to San Jose, you have Joe Thornton and you have Logan Couture and you have Joe Pavelski, all of these guys who are tone setters in that same respect. And I think I don't want to say that I don't want to say there's a clash of machoism or anything like that, but I definitely think it is an adjustment for him to kind of train himself that, he's not the straw that stirs the drink, to borrow a phrase from our friend Zach Devine. He is an ingredient, He's not the straw. And like you said, Kevin, the time is nigh, as they say. But you're right. We're starting to get to the point. I think the first month is when you can use it's an adjustment, it's a time sensitive kind of thing. But I think once you start to get where we are now in the schedule, I think it becomes a concern. It's like, well, if you haven't figured it out this point, are you going to ever figure it out?
I mean, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to ask you guys, and I don't mean to cut you off here, Ian, but I was going to ask you guys, are there too many leaders in this locker room right now where they need to just find a direction? I would say under Pavelski, he's the captain. Are there just too many guys trying to lead this ship? Because, I mean, Pavelski is the captain, but for everything that I've heard over the last few years, it's still Thornton's locker room. And now you got Thornton's locker room, Pavelski's locker room, Couture's trying to lead by example, and then you've got Carlson, and then Burns is his own animal, no pun intended. So is it too much going on here?
I think if they're all on the same page, I think it's obviously a good thing to have that many leaders. But I think if there's a difference of opinion between guys who are, like you said, Kevin, like they're so vocal and so much take on that leadership role, I wouldn't be surprised if there is some kind of internal clash. I mean, the easiest way to get defensive is when somebody thinks that your way of doing things is not right. And let's say you have, these 5 guys you listed off, let's say they all have a different view of where the team is at or where the team is going. I mean, not saying that that's where it is, but if that is the case, things could theoretically get sour really quick. Yeah. And let's not forget too, I don't mean to cut you off, but
even though we keep doing it,
Vlasic is kind of the silent leader.
Yeah,
too.
I really should have said Vlasic, not Burns. Yeah.
I don't know if it's a clash of leadership with the guys. I just wonder if it's a complete disconnect from coaching to players. And maybe Pavelski's trying to deliver the message from DeBoer, and maybe that's not going anywhere. But I don't think it's a with the guys issue. Like, and again, I don't know. I'm not in that locker room. I have no idea what's going on in the locker room, but I don't know. It doesn't seem to me like even on the ice, like when somebody screws up, you don't really see any one guy kind of getting the stink eye from the bench from other players, right? Like, whereas like usually when you have that kind of clash, you kind of see that more often where you can kind of get a sense that there's some rift in the locker room. I don't think the rift is between the players. I think the rift's between the players and the coaching staff at this point, because let's be honest. I mean, this is not that Peter DeBoer hockey is the best hockey, but this isn't even Peter DeBoer hockey anymore. This is just whatever the hell they do when they're out there. Like, this is so far removed from what we've seen in the first 2 seasons of DeBoer being here that I can't help but wonder, again, is this a situation where Peter DeBoer has lost or is losing the room a little bit?
I mean, it would make sense. It would make sense just because it's been well documented on Twitter, and obviously with Twitter, you kind of have to sift through the well-articulated thoughts and the passion-fueled thoughts. But I think,
fire everyone.
Yeah, fire everyone. I think there's a lot of truth to, that, Ian. Like, I think too many times the last 2 years we've seen personnel used in a way that's not very complimentary of other players. I mean, an example, obviously, you think last year, Joakim Ryan outplayed Paul Martin virtually in every facet of the game, but it still took, 7 playoff games for Joakim Ryan to get into the lineup. And like we all kind of agreed about earlier, with Erik Karlsson seemingly on a shorter leash than before, and we've seen this. I feel like we're starting to not see this with Aaron Dell. I feel like DeBoer is letting Aaron Dell do his own thing, giving him the benefit of the doubt. So in that respect, I'm fine with it. But I mean, Erik Karlsson, you have, for some reason, top line Melker Karlsson is still a thing. And just questionable moves. Like, I don't think Tim Heed should really be on that pairing with Burns, let alone in the lineup at all over Joakim Ryan. But That's something we've now seen twice this year, and we've seen, certain situations like, say, an Antti Suomela, say a Rourke Chartier, who have been scratched for, not playing NHL hockey, quote unquote, but then, like I said earlier, guys like top line Melker Karlsson, Jonas Donskoy, even Evander Kane, like you obviously are not going to scratch these guys because they make a lot of money, but I would like to see that kind of no equity mindset that was talked about when DeBoer came in. I would like to see that a little more. Like, if you're a $7 million player and you've got 1 goal in 18 games, you're damn right you should be held accountable.
Damn right.
And to pretty much everything that both of you just said, Doug Wilson took it upon himself to fly out to Ottawa. He wasn't in Toronto, but he flew out to Ottawa to, in my opinion, observe what the heck is going on with these guys. And I think it's a big response to Logan Couture saying we're not even close.
Yeah, I was gonna because my initial thoughts were like, well, I mean, Doug Wilson's an Ottawa guy, isn't he? Like, isn't he from Ottawa?
He is, but just but
showing up, I don't know. And it's funny though because like, it's one of those things where you wonder, because if Doug Wilson, they don't always show Doug Wilson in the press box unless things are going wrong. Like, so I don't know when he's in the press box when they show him in the press box. So for all I know, he's been, because he goes with the team pretty consistently. He's on the road with them a lot. In previous years, we've seen him on the road, good, bad, the ugly. We've seen him around. I think the weird thing is, for me anyway, is that we haven't heard nothing from Doug Wilson so far. A quarter through the season, we haven't really, you would figure at this point with things going on, you'd figure, he's going to give Kurz 5 minutes or something. Unless I missed it, I don't recall hearing anything from Doug Wilson. And that to me is kind of alarming. I mean, obviously he can break radio silence anytime he wants, but with what's going on, I'm surprised we haven't heard from him.
Well, and like you said, I very much am of the belief that, the coach shouldn't be fired because right off the hop, because he is not the one who puts on the skates. But at the same time, the players are not being held accountable. The coach is not being held accountable. Like, are the Sharks going to go through what they went through in 2014-15, where everything was just fine and it was great and all this stuff, and then next thing you know, they're missing the playoffs?
Yeah, actually, it's kind of funny you brought that up because Peter DeBoer with the last 2 days basically made that point about the 15-16 season. Well, we weren't very good to start that year, and we went to the Cup Finals. That's just, to me, such a cop-out. There's no excuses for the Sharks playing so poorly. And it's road right now. We can really hang our heads because this is the road trip we're on and this is how it's going. But this is a season-long problem. And it's December 1st. I put out the tweet at Kevin Lacey 22. I put out the tweet that, hey, I'm not worried about how the Sharks are playing if they're not playing perfect hockey in November. I want them to play perfect hockey in May and June. And it's true, but you do have to worry at this point, even though it's December 1st.
Because I saw that tweet and I wanted to fight you, but I had no time. No, not that I disagree. I mean, obviously I completely agree that the hockey that matters later, but if this team continues the way it is, they might not be playing meaningful hockey in April.
Right.
Like that, and May, April, they might not be playing any meaningful hockey. And that's the part that scares me, is because there's so many red flags with this team. Like, there is no, like, in normal cases, I mean, when we started the season, I'm like, Jones, he's going to find his stride. He always does this. He's always going to find his stride, blah, blah, blah. And then he hasn't. And I have no faith in him finding his stride at any point now.
And what sucks is Jones was great the first half of the game. Jones was keeping the Sharks in it in the first half of the game. He made a lot of high caliber saves, but yet he still finished the game, I think, with an .808 save percentage. It's like, man.
But that's the problem is if you can't, like, I'm not saying that this is all on Jones, and I know I get crap on Twitter because people are like, oh, why are you just blaming Jones? No, I'm blaming everybody. If I point out Jones specifically in a thing, it's because I'm talking about Jones. I can, I hate how the whataboutism, like, if I pick on Jones, then I better follow it up with 6 tweets picking on other players too. Like, Jones just hasn't been good enough, period. We can't, you say he started the game great. He did start the game great. Problem is the game's 60 minutes. 30 minutes of great play doesn't win a game. And we've seen that far too much in a Jones.
Well, and with Martin Jones too, it's the same thing that we spoke about with Erik Karlsson. It's like, at what point do we transition from getting adjusted to struggling? And I think we're way past the point of saying that Martin Jones needs to adjust to whatever hypothetically might be going on. He's legitimately struggling, and it goes back to that accountability thing that I was talking about. I mean, it would be nice to see, because, when the Sharks hired Peter DeBoer, that was like all that, like I said, all that was talked about, no equity and not afraid to bench star players, this, that, and the other. And, how he coached with that fire, so to speak. At this point, what's stopping him from being like, you know what, Dell's been better. Why don't you start the next 3 games in a row?
Because he keeps losing.
I was gonna say, but Dell, I mean, last 2 times we saw Dell, didn't he give up 4 and 5 goals each? I mean, he's not doing any better.
Yeah, statistically, sure, but I would, and again, it's something we've seen for 2 years now. I would argue that it's so hard with goalies, but I feel like the goals Dell lets in are less on him, if that makes any sense.
Okay.
Like, I feel, and it's something that I've noticed and I've mentioned before. I just feel like when both goalies, Dell and Jones, when they're out of position, I feel like, from my perspective, I feel like I see more of an urgency to get back in position from Dell, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And I feel that, and I saw it today. The Martin Jones save with Ryan Dzingel, he got it with the goal stick. Fantastic save, maybe save of the year. But I feel like if that was Aaron Dell's whole body is probably over there, and it's such a it's such a small little thing. But at the same time, it's like, I just feel like the defense is more tightened up when Aaron Dell is in the pipes, whether that's a trust issue or whatever. I'm not too sure, because, again, I'm not in that room. But I just feel like the goals Dell has been letting in are less on him than the goals Jones has been letting in.
Yeah, I agree. I can definitely, I think DeBoer has even said that he's noticed the team seems to have their head a little bit more on a swivel with Dell and net than with Jones for unknown reasons. I do think Dell is a more athletic goaltender than Jones. So I think that might be part of the reason why there's more urgency, is because he physically is more capable of doing that. To me, though, I would be more concerned about the goaltending if the puck wasn't in the Sharks' end the whole game. Like, if the Sharks are controlling the puck a lot and Jones is still giving up 4 goals a game, that would be a bigger issue to me. I want to see the 20 skater or the 18 skaters get themselves in check here. And
again, yeah, I agree. I mean, look, this is not just on Jones. This isn't Antoniemi beach ball time, where everything's going great in front of him and Antoniemi is giving up this gut-wrenching goal.
There you go. Perfect example.
Like, that is not happening here. There's a lot going on with this team. And that's why I said it's one of those things where, yes, we're, we can say things about Jones that aren't great, but at the same time, we're not afraid to come out and say, this guy needs to be better, this guy needs to be better, this guy needs to be better. By no means am I, or any of us here really, as far as I'm concerned, we're not pinning this all on Martin Jones. But when you're not making league average save percentage in low danger, medium danger, and high danger saves, you're part of the problem. Like, he is a problem. And that, he's not the problem maybe, but he is a problem. And that just isn't going away until that changes. It is what it is. I mean,
exactly. By the way, we have just an update at second intermission. Barracuda still winning 5-2. John Martin got plastered by Josh Healy on what looked to be a completely legal check, and John Martin decided to get up and pummel the hell out of Josh Healy. Anyway, there's that. Second intermission, 5-2. And apparently Connor McDavid did something crazy tonight. I don't know what. Watch after the show, folks. But
Connor McDavid doing Connor McDavid.
I know, yeah. I just see tweet. McDavid, how?
I want to get to other stuff, but I do have a tweet from Mike Powell that I want to get to that he sent to us on the Twitter machine. Thank you,
Yeah,
Mike.
it was awesome.
For TTG tonight, please bring up the Kings firing of Murray and the Penguins firing Johnston and both winning the cup in 2012, 2016, respectively. The teams had very similar records to the Sharks when they fired their coach, and then they went on to win. And again, if you feel confident in the roster that this team has, a new voice might shake it up and get you going. I mean, look at the Kings when they fired their coach, they were 13-12-4. The Penguins were 15-10-3. The Sharks are 12-10-5. For some people that say it's too early, I mean, I don't know how Doug Wilson's not considering this. Now, maybe the coach he wants isn't out there or doesn't want to come here. We can what if that forever, but this is my concern, is that if the Sharks just stand pat, they're going to throw away the season. And then if you make the playoffs, if you don't make the playoffs, then you're asking like for a whole Pandora's box here, because now you're talking about, okay, so what do we do with Pavelski? Because people are going to look at Pavelski and say, hey, this guy, scored a bunch of goals, but he's 34. So the smart fan's going to say, well, if he wants to come back for a year at a decent price, then sure, maybe you consider it. And, the dummy's going to be like, oh my God, Pavelski, sign him long-term. No. But what is, does Melker Karlsson? There's Melker Karlsson.
Melker Karlsson is never leaving, Ian.
No, I know. But, what happens if Karlsson doesn't resign? The Sharks did blow a lot of assets to get him, and as far as picks go, and that's like, if the season starts going completely off the rails, does Doug Wilson turn Erik Karlsson into a deadline guy to try and recoup some of those assets?
Which would really suck, because there's that clause about that.
Well, if we send him, you just can't send him east.
Yeah.
Well, and it's like you said, Ian. I mean, you're throwing away the season if you do nothing. And it's like I said with the 14-15 season. I mean, how many after the game when there was loss, how many times do they say, oh, we're a playoff team, we're going to get it together, we're this, we're that, and then trade deadline day, oh, James Shepherd, Tyler Kennedy, Andrew Desjardins, bye. It's tough, because you can say you're a playoff team all you want, but then you're going to get into that area of, let's say the Sharks are in 12th at the trade deadline, and if you don't trade Erik Karlsson, then you're going to have everybody saying he's going to walk for free. Oh my God, we gave up everything for him. And if you do trade him, it's going to be, well, there goes the season. I'll see you in September, or if at all. Because, I mean, I don't know. I feel like I'm less sensitive than some other people. But do we think that this fan base can handle another throwaway season after a reverse sweep and a throwaway season and a cup final loss? I mean, not to be.
I don't think so, but I think that folks need to realize this is what happens in hockey.
Oh, sure.
For sure. Okay, the Sharks, we've discussed this. We've discussed that, the Sharks have to start looking forward at some point.
Yeah.
And even when we got Erik Karlsson, I said, okay, this is the season, because down the road, things are going to get ugly, and they are going to get ugly.
Yeah.
When these contracts get into their third and fourth years, and all these guys are 34, 35, and they're all making $8 million against the cap, it's going to be bad news, guys. It's not going to be good. If you can't get some of these young guys to make the strides that they need to make in order to kind of supplement this roster, obviously Timo Meier's been hurt, but he's been, oh God, where would we be without Timo Meier this season? That's the question. For all the crap that we've given Timo Meier over time, where would we be without Timo Meier at this point? But I mean, that's the thing, right? If you can't backfill, and right now the Sharks, don't have picks to backfill with, like this, there's pain coming. That's why this season to me is so important. It is so frustrating that they're throwing it away, because this is really it for this team, in my opinion, as a legit cup contender. This was supposed to be that year.
Yeah, Joe Thornton did not come back for one more year to miss the playoffs.
Right. Going forward, they'd be playoff contenders, but they'd be a long shot for the cup going forward. This was the season that was supposed to be their season, in my opinion, and that is why this season is so frustrating.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Oh, sorry, what I was laughing about was Josh Healy and John Martin are out of the penalty box, and Healy just laid Martin out again. Even though that's our player, that's pretty funny.
It's no, it's like you said, Ian, and you've said it quite a bit. Do we really want the Sharks to be Chicago but with no cups?
Yeah,
That's where we're heading.
Chicago with no cups is called Philadelphia.
Yeah,
Let's talk about Philadelphia.
or Toronto in 3 years.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Where are you going with that, hockey jerk?
Where do you want to go first then, Philly or Toronto?
Well, let's see. We should go to Philly first because I feel like how this podcast relates to the Leafs. I feel like that's the main course, so we want to
right. You got to save it for last. Well, that's dessert then.
Well, okay, that's fair. Unless you're not a dessert guy.
If you're not a dessert, okay. Let's talk about Ron Hextall being
for banter like this. Please subscribe.
Yes, let's talk about Hextall in Philly. I was surprised that he was shown the door, and I honestly, I know some people really like the move. I don't like it at all. I think that when he took over from Paul Holmgren, who is now back in charge, that cupboard was empty. They just threw money at whatever problem they had, and whatever was shiny, they would go and spend money and get it, whether it worked or not. They were impatient. I remember they had some Bobrovsky guy. I guess he's pretty good that they gave up on pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty decent goalie. And this team, for all its faults, I mean, this team hasn't had a goalie that of any decency since Ron Hextall was a player. I mean, it's been that bad. So I don't really. It's hard because, like, I think that when I look at this team now, there's a lot I really like about it. I like a lot of what's in the cupboard. I think you have a goalie coming, although he's struggling in the minors right now, but we've seen that happen to other guys too, who have come on and, have ended up being pretty good goalies. They've had some stumbles along the way. Carter Hart's not having the best season on the farm team right now, but there's a lot in that farm system to like when it was just barren when Holmgren was gone. So now that Holmgren's back in charge, even though he's going to bring in a new GM and step aside, it makes me nervous for Flyers fans that even if he brings in a guy, it's going to be his guy and he's still going to be the one whispering in the ear. Whereas I think Hextall had a lot more autonomy. Where are you guys at?
I don't have a lot to say, so I'll pretty much defer to Hockey Jerk, but I did get a text from my friend Eric Wolf, who is a big Flyers fan, and he was like, what are they doing? And to me, I don't know what I was more surprised about, Hextall being let go or the fact that Paul Holmgren is still with the Flyers, because as you just said, Paul Holmgren's track record stinks in Philly. So
yeah.
Oh, for all the right that they've done on the Hextall era by building assets from within. Ay.
So, I too have a friend who's a Philadelphia Flyers fan, and every day I see him, I tell him, I say, look, I'm sorry to inform you, but Brian Elliott is not the answer to your question in goal. Joking aside, in a text message conversation, I told him a friend of the show, Elliot Friedman on the 31 Thoughts podcast, was talking about, the Flyers GM process, talking about Bobby Clark and Paul Holmgren, and to me, kind of just screamed old boys club. So I texted my friend about it. I said, I'm nervous if I was a Flyers fan because it sounds like the old boys club is still a thing. And his response was, why would I be nervous? We have nothing to lose. Which I think gives you an idea.
Oh, they have so much to lose, though.
Yeah, well, I feel like that kind of is it's tough. I think if you're a Flyers fan, because I'm kind of torn in the middle. I don't really think Ron Hextall was the greatest guy for the job, only because he seemed to be having that same kind of mindset that we're seeing with the Sharks, where it was stay the course, we'll figure it out, go from there. But then at the same time, like you said, Ian, I'm nervous about, Paul Holmgren getting the keys back to the team and, where he goes with that. And I've heard a lot too said about, how people are upset that the Flyers don't have any fighting majors and all of this stuff. And I'm just, it's just like I feel like there's more pertinent things going on with this team. And I don't really know. I don't know where you go with the Flyers. I mean, they're not, they're not the Ottawa Senators. Like they have some decent pieces. And I think if they got out and got a guy, say they've been interviewing Chuck Fletcher, say a guy like Chuck Fletcher, who's not part of that old boys club, I think that would help them get in the right direction, because we kind of, we've seen Chuck Fletcher be that kind of more aggressive general manager, going out and getting Nino Niederreiter, going out and trading Brent Burns and signing Eric Stahl and Parisi. And we've seen him be aggressive. And I think that guy would be the perfect guy to be the Flyers general manager. But at the same time, like you said, Ian, with Paul Holmgren and, Bob Clark still with their voices in the ears of whoever they hire, it would make me nervous as a Flyers fan.
Like, are they going to trade, because the thing that I'd be afraid of is like, okay, so they want somebody who's going to be tough. So what are they going to do? Throw away Provorov for Tom Wilson?
I honestly wouldn't be surprised.
That sounds logical to me for Paul Holmgren.
Right. Am I wrong?
Well, and that's the other thing too, is like, and I never really got down with James Van Riemsdyk going back to the Flyers, but that very much seemed like a Hextall move to me. And now you have, somebody new coming in. For all, like, the new guy coming in could think that bringing JVR back was even dumber than I think it was, and then you create all sorts of problems. And I mean, I feel like too, and I feel like I've been talking forever, but you talked about the Flyers' toughness, right? Like, how is Wayne Simmons not more of a priority? Like, he scored 24 goals last year with his groin torn apart at the seams. Like, that's Flyers tough. And they're talking about trading him for a marginal defenseman. Like, I heard, that he was like rumors, whatever. But, somebody was saying, oh, he should go back to LA, which I wouldn't hate him going back to LA. But they're saying, oh, yeah, we being the Flyers need to get Jake Muzzin. And it's like, you really want Jake Muzzin? Like,
I'm sure I'm sure for the nice price of Ivan Provorov, the Kings would be happy to give you Jake Muzzin.
Oh, exactly.
Like, that's what I'm scared of. If I'm a Flyers fan, I'm scared of like some of these assets you built up and some of these players that, you don't want to get into a situation, where this player isn't, oh, well, Tyler Seguin isn't brewing enough for us, so we're going to send him to Dallas. Like, we don't want to, like, does that what you want running your team? Like, because that's where I'm afraid that the Flyers are going to head if they don't get somebody who can, stand up to Holmgren really quick. You're going to be that team where it's like, oh, well, this actual, I don't think Sean Couturier is a Flyer enough for me. I love Sean Couturier.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? And you're just going to, like, let good players, oh, Nolan Patrick, he's not Flyer enough. Let's just send him off to Kentucky. I don't know. There's no
well, and
what kind of I'm not muted. Okay, what kind of expansion are we going here?
Well, and I think too, like, there was obviously another rumor, Nylander for Ghost Bear, and it's like, okay, Toronto meet Toronto. It's like the Spider-Man pointing at Spider-Man meme,
but I just can't help, like, with Toronto though, because like Toronto. And we'll use this to segue into Nylander. Like, Toronto for me is this as a hockey culture is just so weird to me, because they go from, like, if they're winning, it's it's planning the parade, to if they're losing, it's like, what did Patrick Marleau eat for breakfast this morning? Oh, I don't see Jake Gardner on his morning jog. What the hell's going on? What if he's not jogging? Maybe he's hurt. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they get so obviously there's the appetite for anything Leafs up there, and I get that, but man, they go so, like, in order to try and fill that, man, the shit they have to do to fill that void, like, it's so funny to watch, where it's like, it's so bipolar. It's like, 1 second it's like they're picking apart, like, oh, what's Austin Matthews not doing this time, and rah, 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 and then and then next thing it's like, oh, well, Austin Matthews is back and he scored a goal, and Freddie Anderson's gonna get a Vezina, and and Morgan Riley is going to be the Norris winner, and it's going to be great, and we're going to win the cup, and it's just
and to your point, I don't know if this was Toronto, it may have been Montreal last year at the trade deadline, or maybe it was Philadelphia actually. Now that I think about it, but again, like you're talking about that media, like there was a player just so happened to be on the day of the trade deadline at practice, grabbed his sticks and left. And everybody freaked out. Oh my God, he's going to Montreal. He's going here. He's going there. And then they interview him. They're like, "Hey, we saw you leave with your sticks." And he's like, "Oh yeah." He literally had a dentist appointment.
Yeah,
like it's that level of just ridiculous.
I love it, and it's funny because like, and if you ever like wanted to see like how like that media can just Canadian media in general can hold a grudge. I mean, we saw what happened with the Gino Reda thing about Erik Karlsson. Tell me that wasn't because he walked out of a scrub. Like the Canadian's like, "What? He didn't give us a quote? How dare he?"
Yeah, exactly.
Go and get on my computer and type this.
So ridiculous.
How dare he not answer a question that we were told to not ask?
Right. How dare he? Who does he think he is? Now I'm going to go and tell everyone that he was the problem in Ottawa, even though the owner is still Eugene Melnyk.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of that real quick, because I do want to get to the Toronto thing, but man, a lot of empty seats at Canadian Tire Center today for Erik Karlsson's return, and it's not because of Erik Karlsson.
He was the problem.
Yeah. Oh,
he only won 2 Norris trophies.
He was the problem. If it wasn't for him, Mike Hoffman would still be here. And all right.
Update 5-3, Barracuda still lead, but the Heat are climbing back into this one.
All right. So let's talk about this Nylander thing quick, since Nylander watch was all the Twitter rage. I just liked watching all the GIFs and stuff. So Nylander resigns. He basically gets the deal that he was basically offered to begin with, from what I understand. So good job wasting 2 months of your career. But I'm not really surprised. I think that at the end of the day, he wants to play. He wants to play in the NHL. I don't know why, like, I understand like what you think you're worth, but I can't wrap my head around a guy who doesn't want to make $7 million on a legit contender. Like, you're gonna sit in Sweden for that? Like, oh man, I don't know.
Yeah,
that seems really dumb.
And to me, I don't know. I feel I'm probably in the minority, but I wanted Toronto to be like, "This is it. This is our offer, and if you don't take it, we're fine with letting you sit this year." Because that team didn't need to add any more offense. Let's face it. I mean, sure, would you rather have Nylander than not? Absolutely. For sure. But I don't think that team was really that much worse without him. They're doing fantastic things this season.
Well, and too, Kevin, I think because of how well they've been doing, like you said, and I tweeted out this morning at hockey_jerk, I was firmly of the belief that Kyle Dubas, like you said, would have no problem saying, "Hey, you don't want to play? That's fine. Sit at home all year. I don't care."
Yeah.
And I firmly believe that, because Kyle Dubas he's kind of he's like this new, I don't even know how to describe it. Like when, like in the coming of age movie, when the cool kid comes to school and everybody wants to know about him. Like, I feel like that's Kyle Dubas and the GM.
It's like John Shaka, only good.
Yeah. And like, and now here we are, 12 hours later, and the Maple Leafs gave him more per year than what he originally asked for.
And that's the part where I'm like, good on you, Toronto. And then, wow, really?
Because Nylander wanted the Pasternak deal, which is only $6.67 a year.
Yeah,
6.9.
That's incredible to me. That if you're Toronto at this point, what was the point? Like, I feel that Toronto ends up losing out on the deal unless they win the cup.
Because I think they wanted because at first he wanted Draisaitl money. Like, it wasn't always from the start the Pasternak deal was the thing. At first it was the Draisaitl money that he wanted. Like, that's where this started. He wanted Draisaitl money.
That's true.
But it came down to Pasternak money.
For me, that's also a part of the reason why we're heading towards another lockout in a couple of years. Is you're getting
because Peter Chiarelli's an idiot.
These young players and their agents who they're coming off their entry-level contracts, and all of a sudden they are superstars after 1 or 2 years. And that's not really how it works. Yes, the signs are there, but I don't know.
Isn't that how it should work, though? Like, I feel like the NHL, and maybe sports in general does this, and I brought this up on the last show, but I'm kind of okay with seeing things change from getting paid for what you're likely to do than getting paid for what you've done years past.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Like, aren't you tired of watching guys like, look at, I mean,
that does
plays on sense. 2 bad knees, still gets $5 million because of what he's done previously, not for what he's projected. Do you think that he's going to put up numbers that are going to be $5 million numbers this year? No. He gets that money because he's Joe Thornton and what he's done previously. And I would like to, I kind of like the fact that the guys are getting paid for what they should do rather than what they've done previously. Mm-hmm. You don't overpay for, you get a guy at 32 and you pay him $8 million for what he did in the prime of his career, which he's never getting back to.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
I can't argue against what you just said. That does make a lot of sense. But my problem is, and this is just how GMs work.
Oh, for sure.
Once these players like Nylander and Draisaitl and Line A upcoming and whatnot, once they hit 34, 35 years old, they're probably still going to be asking for this huge money, like what Joe Thornton is getting paid at 38. Like,
I don't know. By the time that I just wonder if we're starting to see a shift, though.
Well, we're definitely seeing a shift, but
because I mean, the cap's not going away. I mean, at some point, it's like, I don't know. I mean, it's hard because there's always, rookies always get super hyped up, right? It doesn't matter how soft the draft is. We're always talking about the top 5 picks like they're the next coming from Jesus.
But everybody, Alex True's on a breakaway. Hang on. Oh, I'm missing that. Everybody has a lot of promise at this point. All the incoming players have a lot of promise and they don't all pan out. But so if we're paying on what they could do, then everybody's going to be a $2 to $3 million player going into their 24-year-old year.
Yeah.
And then you really are hitting salary cap issues at that point, unless the salary cap goes astronomically higher.
Yeah, well, and
it's interesting, and I hear so. Just sorry in the chat.
It's a great argument that I was unprepared for, and I appreciate you bringing it up.
Anthony in the chat saying, if Thornton is a Hall of Fame player, you pay him the big bucks. Look, I understand why Joe Thornton can command $5 million in the league. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve it so much. I just wonder if, with the way the game is changing and how dollars are being allocated, is that the way you want to? Is that the way you should be as a GM allocating your dollars? Should you be giving the 39-year-old veteran $5 million? When you have, I mean, the Sharks don't have the problems that other teams have because they've been consistently good. They don't have a plethora of top 10 picks coming up. Like, everyone wants to talk about, oh, well, look where Toronto is. Look where Toronto is. Yeah. Do you guys not remember Toronto sucking for 2 decades? Like, it wasn't like they just were awesome all this time and then lucked into, Marner, Matthews, Nylander. Like, that didn't happen. They sucked and they got these players over time. The Sharks have never, yes, they didn't win the cup, but they've never sucked on the level that some of these other teams that have these players that I'm supposed to be upset that Kevin LeBanc isn't as good as Mitch Marner. Well, I fucking hope not. He's a 5th round pick. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to swear, but it's just like, this is the crap that I've been dealing with on Twitter, and it drives me crazy because it's like, do you not realize that we have not had to suffer the pain that Leafs fans have suffered?
And you can drive Ian crazy yourself by following Ian on Twitter at Ian Blogs Hockey.
Yeah. I don't want to, I didn't want to get off on a tangent here. It just makes me curious that with the way the game's always changing, if this is the way that the team structures are going to start going, where your guys like Patrick Laine are going to get paid in advance for what they're expected to do. And obviously, there's going to be miscues. Guys are not going to live up to potential. And that's going to happen too. But I just wonder if can you afford to pay that veteran 34-year-old, 35-year-old guy, millions of dollars when you have these kids up and coming?
Well, and I think back, if you think back 7 or 8 years ago, I remember thinking if a guy got a contract with an AAV that was over 6 million, automatically you were in trouble. What are you doing?
Yeah.
6.25, good Lord. And now we're even if Evander Kane, $7 million, Mark-Edward Vlasic, $7 million, Brent Burns, $8 million, and even like you said, Leon Draisaitl clocking in at 8.25. Good Lord, Connor McDavid at 12.5. We're seeing all these big bucks, and you know what? I'll say this: Austin Matthews is not making less than John Tavares. I'll tell you that right now.
But these players, every player that you've mentioned has done something. Even as young as McDavid and Laine have been, and Matthews have been in their career, they've done an awful lot in their career. William Nylander was a 20-goal scorer last year. 7 million, sure, why not?
But in the media fishbowl that is Toronto, where your fourth line player is an all-star because that's how much coverage they get.
Yeah.
Well, and
it's the Maple Leafs. It's the Canadian market inflation of a player. We've seen this time and time again. A player comes out of Toronto, and because the media is so familiar with them, they're the greatest thing since sliced bread, and they go to another market, and they are mediocre at best because they've been overhyped. Right. Like, and I'm not saying that no good players come from Toronto, because obviously Toronto has a lot of really good players, but I just feel like there is a Toronto glow on players where players do become bigger than they are because of the market they're in and the coverage that they get.
Nikita Zaitsev.
Well, and you know what too? You have like you were saying, you have William Nylander, coming down to the Pasternak deal. Pasternak has outscored Nylander by 15, 20 points every year they've been in the league together.
And he's a much better defensive player than William Nylander is too.
Exactly. And you look at, and you're, like you said, you're throwing out, Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner and, what's Laine going to get and Draisaitl and all this stuff. Like, I'm looking at guys like David Pasternak, guys like Mark Scheifele, Nathan McKinnon. These guys are elite. And there's the word for you, the buzzword, elite, all-star caliber players who drive the bus on their team under $7 million a year. Like, I and you know what? That's, if you're a GM, obviously you hope that all of your players are, not all about the money and will take the market value. But, like you said, we're reaching this point where, it's not a matter of what have you done lately. It's what will you do? You have a guy, you have me. Ian Reed just scored 90 points. I could do that. Give me $9 million a season. Like, it's like you said, it's becoming what will you do, not what have you done.
Yes.
But again, what happens when that doesn't happen? Like, I know we've had shows where we've said, is Jonas Donskoy really worth that money? Is Chris Tierney really worth that money? Is Melker Karlsson really worth that money? Now those, I
said, at least we're only talking about at most $2
million. Those are those are lesser dollar amounts,
right.
but still, I mean, you can apply the same argument there.
Sure.
Well, and when you're like the Sharks and you've got 4 $7 million players on your team, every penny really counts. And all of a sudden, $2 million on a non-playoff team is a lot different than $2 million on a Stanley Cup team.
Yeah.
And I think too, that's when Melker Karlsson, when he signed his current contract extension, like at the time, I was down with it because the only big money contract we had was Brent Burns. His extension hadn't even kicked in yet, and so you think, $2 billion for a solid penalty killer, fourth liner. Yeah, whatever. But then you fast forward, like I said, you've got 4 $7+ million guys on your team, and, the potential to be even higher. I mean, Thomas Hertl 3 years after this year, what's he going to want? Timo Meier, restricted free agent. What's he going to want? and all of the sudden you're looking at $2 million and it's like, well, you've only got, an assist and 2 goals in 27 games. So yeah, you're a good penalty killer, but sorry.
I worry about that Timo Meier RFA negotiation this next summer, because if the Sharks are still where they're at financially right now, next year, I could see that getting pretty ugly, because Timo Meier's going to want to get paid, and are the Sharks going to be able to do it? And then it becomes a matter of, are they going to insult him with a poor offer kind of thing?
Well, and where things are going now, what if Timo Meier outscores Vander Kane?
Yeah.
And that's something that kind of I noticed too, is like, okay, now don't get me wrong, I like Evander Kane, good player, goal scorer, hard to play against, all that stuff, blah blah blah. But I would be a great hockey coach. But you look at Evander Kane, and I don't have the stats on front of me, but I believe his career high in goals is, I want to say 28, or maybe he got 30 once. But it was way back in his Winnipeg days. 28 goals. Or sorry,
Okay.
29 last year. Okay, 29 goals is all well and good. But then you have him clocking in at $7 million a year. And then you turn around and you look at a guy like Jason Zucker, who he's not scored as many goals as Kane, but he's hit 30 goals, and he looks like he's going to hit 30 goals again this year. He's in at 5 3/4.
Yep.
And it's kind of like I was saying earlier. You have that mindset of like, well, I want to get paid. I outscored this guy once. I want to get paid more than him. And it's just creating problem after problem after problem.
That might be a combination of, this is going to probably be dumb, but combination of, well, I guess Kane's got a better agent than Zucker, combined with, I guess Doug Wilson's a little more gullible than Minnesota's. Who is GM in Minnesota these days?
It's Paul Fenton.
Yes, Paul Fenton. So,
but I think too, I feel like the Sharks were really desperate to sign Evander Kane as well.
Oh, there were. There
Yeah.
were.
And it's one of those things. And even, as much as Kyle Dubas publicly played hardball and played hard to get and all the stuff with William Nylander, like I said, the fact that he gave Nylander more than what he asked for shows that he was desperate to keep him.
Right, which is why I feel Toronto ends up losing this deal. Again, unless they win the cup, then it doesn't matter.
I'll tell you this: 6-year deal for Nylander. If he's there past year 3, I will sell my Twitter account.
If he's there past this year, I'd be surprised. I won't sell my Twitter account, but
oh my goodness!
Oh my goodness, indeed. So, but I don't know. So, what's your thoughts on the Nylander deal overall? Like, obviously, I think Toronto is better than I thought they would be with their defense, but I feel like, we have a goal.
Sorry, we have a goal. We have an empty net goal. I believe it was Jeff VL, but I'm trying to, I don't know. Stockton's camera work is atrocious. So actually, I think it was Rourke Chartier.
Oh, hey.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, for me, I think the one thing with this team is I'm not going to believe squat until they win a playoff series. Like, I still think it's like, oh, can this team win a cup conceivably? Yeah, look at they're good. They definitely, could probably make their way through the East, but until they win a playoff series, I just can't take them seriously, because even if you look back at some of the other teams that went on to win cups, like go back to Chicago, for example, they had to go through that heartbreaking conference final loss to Detroit first.
Yeah.
And I just, they've lost in the first round of Boston last year, but I don't know. I feel like this team needs to win a series before we start talking cup with them. That's just my opinion. Win something.
That's how it should be, but it's Toronto's world and world.
I know.
But you're right. You are right. Oh my goodness. Sorry.
One thing before we move on, because I completely forgot about this until I mentioned John Chaika. What did you guys think of the deal with Chicago for Schmaltz?
Nick Schmaltz and Dylan Strome and all that.
Dylan Strome and Brandon Perlini.
I think it's a smart trade for both teams. Now, if you think about it from Arizona's side, you're trading away some futures that may or may not blossom into an NHL caliber player for an NHL caliber player. And I think it gives you a little bit more goal scoring punch, which is what Arizona needs. And then on the flip side for Chicago, you're restocking that cupboard, so to speak, that's pretty barren, but you're also giving yourself some pretty inexpensive bottom six NHLers to play on your team. And it's Ian will be the first to tell you, Alex DeBrincat and Dylan Strome together. It's, it was a filthy combination in Erie. Could it be the same again? Hey, could be. Who knows? But and I've always been a fan of Brendan Pierlini as well. I just like his game, and I think I don't think there's a loser in this trade. I just think that Chicago is a better winner, if that makes sense.
I think that Arizona loses this deal. And because, you lose the deal because you've given up on a third overall pick, and you just can't miss on when you have a pick that high, you can't miss on it. Now, in hindsight, it's 2020. Sure. At the time, I thought that Strome was going to be a great addition for them. It's hard to knock a guy. Yes, okay, his skating has always been a little suspect, but this is a guy that was averaging 2 points a game in junior, which is a lot of damn points, which usually translate a little better to the pro game than it has. But man, it's when you look at that draft and you look at the Leafs taking Marner after, you look at Noah Hannafin going after, go down the list. That's
Timo Meier.
That draft was Timo Meier, Mikko Rantanen,
Matt Barzal.
When you look at some of the other players that were taken in that draft, especially immediately after, not that, I don't think that they were ever going to go, Mitch Marner. And again, hindsight 2020, absolutely. But, you miss on a pick like that and you set your franchise back years. And we're seeing that now in Arizona because that's the pick they needed to turn out to really turn things around. And now they don't have that piece.
See, and for me, on the bright side, yes, you're giving up on a third overall pick who, like you said, was very good in Erie, but at least it's not at least they got something decent for him too. You know what I mean? It's not the sexiest trade, but it's at least salvageable. And Schmaltz is point per game in his 2 appearances with Arizona, so maybe there's something cooking there.
I think that the Coyotes have stocked the cupboard so much with scoring forwards, though, that I don't think they're going to really miss out much. I've never been a fan of Dylan Strome. I don't even know if I had him in my top 5 the year he was drafted. I either had him 6 or 5. So I definitely had Mitch Marner 3rd. And right now, Mitch Marner is destroying Dylan Strome as far as his output goes.
That's putting it nicely.
That's putting it mildly, for sure.
Yeah. But for me, I like the I do like the trade for both teams. To me, it's a why not for both teams. Nick Schmaltz has been good for the Blackhawks. He hasn't been amazing. And Perlini has battled injuries. I think he looked really good for Tucson. And Strome's been okay for Tucson. And this year he hasn't been really that good for Arizona. So I don't know. I think that with the assets that the Coyotes have, who knows which ones will pan out. But for the assets that they have, they're afforded the risk of giving up Dylan Strome as a 3rd overall pick, and they'll still come out of it fine.
Well, and I like that you said that too, Kevin, because we've
Barracuda won, by the way.
Yay!
6-4.
How many rebuilding teams have we seen this with? Arizona, obviously is the one that comes to mind, but how many years, and even Jesus, who am I thinking of? The Buffalo Sabres. Like, how many years can you stockpile prospects before you kind of say to yourself, all right, we need to start winning games?
Now, yeah.
I mean, that's what happened in Philly, right? I mean, yeah, you have a nice full cupboard, but if it doesn't translate into wins right now, and that's what I think happened was, a little too much patience probably with Hackstall. And, at some point, and I tweeted this after when I found out Hextall was fired, like, at some point, though, like, it's all well and good to stock the cupboard, but if you can't turn that into wins, then, that's a problem still. And that's the problem that they've had in Arizona for a long time. They've had a lot of good draft picks that either haven't worked out or not. I wouldn't say even good draft picks, but they picked a lot of high picks that haven't worked out. That maybe are questionable looking back on them.
Yeah, Kyle Turris, and it's why too. I mean, like I said, Buffalo. Look at the Ryan O'Reilly trade. It's why Buffalo took on Vladimir Sobotka and Patrick Berglund, who have atrocious contracts.
Yeah,
but it was again getting NHL caliber players to help you win games. And I don't know, last I checked, Buffalo kind of seemed to be doing okay.
Yeah, they're doing okay, just like we all thought they would.
Yep. Well, hey, well, I mean, I don't know if you've checked the foreseen rankings lately.
My foreseen rankings are garbage this year, I feel like. Oh, man.
Okay, wait, Christine, you're going to help me. What is a billet mom?
A billet mom. Okay, so your billet is who you live with when you are on a junior team. You live with a billet family.
Okay. Well, Christine, if you ever sit next to her again, tell her to follow me on Twitter at hockey_jerk.
Yeah, let's open it up to the chat. I don't have the chat open since I had the Barracuda video up, but what's going on? We want you guys to be involved too. So
absolutely, and then we should probably wrap up on some Barracuda.
Yeah. But just wrapping up the Barracuda real quick while you guys send in your comments and whatnot. Sure. Third period was actually pretty well played by the Heat, unfortunately. I know Royce Sommer in his pregame interview with Nick Nollenberger talked about that the Barracuda haven't played a full 60 minutes against the Heat this season, and tonight was more of the same because the Barracuda played 40 minutes against the Heat. Heat outscored the Barracuda, I believe it was only 2-1, but the Heat scored 3 of the last 4 goals. So the only goal for the Barracuda was that empty netter of course it was Chartier. Okay. But Spencer Fu got one in the last minute. Nevertheless, Barracuda, second best record in the American Hockey League, and continue to win.
Well, November was kind of an interesting month for them, though, because they were pretty much 500 for November. Which after
the Barracuda?
Yeah, the Barracuda were 500. Yeah. They would win a game, lose 2, win a game, lose 2, win a game. Oh, man. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't been able to watch the Barracuda as much. I watched a couple of the Colorado games. They've just been on at just weird times where I can't seem to catch up on them. How's Rourke Chartier looked since his demotion?
I think that Rourke Chartier has looked okay.
He hasn't had LeBanc pouty face?
Huh?
He hasn't had LeBanc pouty face?
He hasn't, no. But both he and Gambrell, since their most recent reassignments, neither of them have really stood out to me. They've just been kind of in the fold. Not bad, but they haven't been...
They're not lighting the world on fire.
They're not screaming, please call this guy back up type of hockey.
Right.
Chartier, in fact, I think that this empty net goal that Chartier had might only be his second goal since coming back. So, yeah, I mean, defensively, he's solid. Face-offs, he's solid, but
but the mannerisms are good. Like he doesn't seem to.
Oh yeah. You know I just remembered now. Yeah, Kevin LeBanc really had some poor mannerisms when he.
Have you seen?
Definitely not that.
Have you seen him wearing sunglasses inside?
I haven't.
Oh, poor Rourke Chartier.
Uh,
Okay, so something in the chat that's been bandied about quite a bit.
Mhm.
So is Buffalo's play, and now they're 14-3-3 in their last 20 games. Is that beyond small sample size, or are we still on a quote unquote miracle run?
I think it's a miracle run, but I think that the Sabres should be looked more seriously than they were. I think the Sabres, Hockey Jerk, I think you put the Sabres in the playoffs this
I did.
year. And I picked them to be 9th in the East. So I got them out of the cellar. I definitely think that
it's a bubble team.
You had them as a bubble team?
Maybe a wild card team.
Yeah, I definitely think that with Housley having a full year under his belt as a head coach and Eichel not being pouty and the other youngsters having confidence that, hey, I can play in the National Hockey League. They've got a good thing going right now. I'm curious to see how the Sabres do when they get some adversity. I'm not saying that they haven't beaten tough teams, but when the Sabres lose 3 in a row, how will they rebound? If they can rebound strongly, 3-4 in a row, losing, and then rebound strongly from there, then I really would consider them a contender.
I think too, and I could be screwing these numbers up a little bit, but in their 10-game winning streak, I believe 7 or maybe 8 of those games, believe it or not, actually went past regulation. And and to me, I don't know, to me that seems like adversity. I mean, I don't know how many of those times they were trailing and tied it up. I'm not sure, but I feel like it's kind of what I said earlier.
Actually, now that you brought that up, I think 5 of their first 9 wins of that streak, they were trailing going into the third period. Now that you mention it,
and like I said too, when they traded Ryan O'Reilly, they got. I mean, who doesn't love draft picks? But they got 3, like I said, 3 NHL caliber roster players for 1, and it gives your lineup more experience, obviously, and then too, I think considering they got Jeff Skinner for peanuts, I think too obviously obviously helps things. I don't really know, because I mean, sure, Carter Hutton is a good goalie, but I just don't know. Maybe do we
He's like
think
the second coming of Thomas Greiss?
Yeah, like do we both ironically from the Sharks farm system?
No, that's the ironic thing for sure. But that's how I look at Carter Hutton, right? Like, he's Thomas Greiss. He's this guy that was just this backup that's come out of nowhere, and suddenly, after being written off as a backup, like just a backup forever, finds a spot and ends up becoming a starter, because what else is there?
I'm also wondering too, because you talked, Kevin, you said how Jack Eichel's not pouty anymore. I think back to last season, that interview Ryan O'Reilly did, where he basically said, in so many words, that right now he's not having fun playing hockey, and his love for the game was killed. I almost wonder if Ryan O'Reilly was being pouty, and because now I love Ryan O'Reilly, but I'm wondering if him being pouty, I wonder if that may have rubbed off on the rest of the room. And now that he's kind of gone, it's an out of sight, out of mind kind of thing.
Yeah, because I do think that O'Reilly had a little bit of baggage in Colorado. It's been a while since he was a member of the Avalanche, so I don't quite remember, but I do think he had a little bit of baggage. So, again, we're speculating on what we read, for those of you watching. So we aren't there. We don't know. But Hockey Jerk, I think there's stock in it.
Oh, I mean, I think for sure. Like, when you got a guy who's expected to put up the numbers that Ryan O'Reilly's expected, but he's one of your best players. If one of your best players has lost his love for the game, that there's no way that can't rub off on the rest of the room.
Yep.
Whether he's a leader, whether he's a leader or just a leader, points wise, like, he's still, you're still looking up to him.
And I think too, like, like I was saying before, when you're having so many prospects and AHL guys in your locker room, early 20s, I feel, because, for anybody who doesn't know, I'm in my early 20s, and I don't really feel like an impressionable person. But I feel like when you're an athlete, it's a little bit different. You kind of want to follow the veterans and see, how they go about business, and so how you can better yourself and kind of,
Absolutely.
evolve into being that type of person. And, I think if you see Ryan O'Reilly, your best player, I think if you see him being pouty, it's, what it all boils down to. It's like Justin Williams said, it's a game and you're there to have fun. And, if you're not, if you're not, winning, you're not having fun. And if you're not having fun, you're probably not winning.
Yeah.
You play to win.
Do you want to see something? You want to hear something crazy though?
Yes.
Jack Eichel has 32 points. He's averaging just over a point a game. His shooting percentage is only 4.6%.
Can I spill some tea right here on air? I'm going to spill some tea.
Okay.
Drew Weber at puck underscore at puck underscore over underscore glass. Drew Weber doesn't, or at least didn't prior to this year, like Jack Eichel. Him and I had a lot of arguments about it. He tell me Jack Eichel's not elite. I just want to say, Drew Weber, you're welcome.
And on that, let's get out of here, guys.
We had one more question in the chat that I do want to get to, and that is, when is Perron going to get a call up to the big club?
When is who? I'm sorry.
Francis Perron.
Probably when Peter DeBoer gets fired, since he doesn't like young players.
I really think that Francis Perron needs to show more, though. I mean, to me, okay, cool, awesome that he started off really hot.
Yeah.
But, I mean, even when you look at his stat line, it's like 2 goals, 0, 0, 0, 2 goals, 0, 1, 0, 0, 2 goals, like right now, I do think he's playing good hockey, and him being on a line with Alex True and John Martin of all people, that's a good way, a good litmus test for Francis Perron to find out, can he really do it on his own at this, or is it the byproduct of him being on a line with Dylan Gambrell and Vincent Praplin to start the year?
Right.
So, what I have seen from Perron is a very lethal shot, but I mean, if you don't have the time to get that shot off, then why call him up? So I have noticed good tendencies. He's starting to, because he's on a line with True and Martin now, he's starting to actually make plays and be more dynamic in the offensive zone. So I think a call-up's not out of the question, but I still think they're trying to figure out what exactly they have in Francis Perron.
Well, and you bring up a good point too, because with call-ups, especially the position the Sharks are in, if you're calling a guy up, he needs to be better than everybody. Well, maybe not everybody, but he needs to be better than most
than everybody but Melker Karlsson.
Right. He needs to come in. Let's just say hypothetically, he needs to get called up to the Sharks and make an impact right away. Otherwise, he's just going to go back down to the Barracuda. Hello, Rourke Chartier.
Yeah.
I
mean, look at Kevin. Ian, you mentioned Kevin LeBanc from 2 years ago. For those of you who didn't watch us from the beginning, we openly griped about Kevin LeBanc being sent back down and acting like a diva on the Barracuda. And that's not putting it lightly. He acted like a diva on the ice because he was upset that he got sent down. So you want to avoid these kind of situations, because Barclay Goodrow, same situation, acted like a diva when he got sent back down to the minors. Thankfully, Chartier and Gambrell haven't been so far, but who knows if Perron gets called up too early and he can't hang, they send him back down. We don't know how he's going to act when he comes back to the Barracuda.
Vince, we don't call them call-ups in San Jose. We call them press box tours. Touche.
Redeem shipment.
Here's my thing with on Perron. I think I said this last show as well. When you're calling a guy up, you're not only looking at what he's doing, but you're looking at how he's going to fit into your lineup. I don't know if a guy like Francis Perron is going to give the Sharks what they need on a bottom 6 line.
Danny O'Regan.
Exactly.
You heard it here, folks. Tomorrow against Montreal, Joe Pavelski, Joe Thornton, Francis Perron.
Oh, dang.
And I'm not advocating for that because I think that the Sharks have better players, but I think that a call up, you obviously want to reward the guys that are performing on the farm team, but you also have to have a place for this guy to play where you're going to put him in a position to have success. And I don't know if putting him on a line with Barclay Goodrow and Melker Karlsson is exactly going to give, a guy like Francis Perron any chance of success. That's just
and Tim Heed right now can't get in the lineup, not only because the 6 defensemen, as poorly as they've played, the 6 defensemen that are ahead of him are better, but also because theoretically the Sharks don't need another offensive defenseman in the lineup. They've got too much of that already, and that's what Heed is. So if Heed was strictly a defensive defenseman, like a Jake Middleton, who I don't know if Jacob Middleton's an NHL player, he's a good, solid defender. But if Heed was a lot better defensively and sacrificed all the offense, he'd be getting a lot more opportunities to get in the lineup.
Anthony asked if LeBanc and Goodrow have attitudes and why have them on the roster. They've matured. I mean, we're talking a while ago. These aren't. I haven't seen Kevin LeBanc do the mannerisms of the way he was when he went back to the Barracuda. I have not seen that from Barclay Goodrow. I think they've both matured a significant amount. Look at, sometimes you're young and you have a bad attitude and you do stupid things and it screws with your career. We watched that happen with Barclay Goodrow. Barclay Goodrow was playing in silly rookie tournaments when he had no business being in a rookie tournament anymore because the team wanted to humble him a little bit. And again, I can't, again, this is what we observe as fans. We're not in the room. Like I sure tell in the room. I'm 3,000 miles away. So this is stuff that we've just observed, watching the game. So, I mean, I'm not going to say like we're idiots, but take it, you got to take it with a grain of salt too. Maybe we're seeing something that is just optically bad that may not be actually happening. Maybe it is. You have to take some of our observations with a grain of salt. Not that I want you to, because we're awesome and this is the best show ever.
And that's why you should subscribe.
And that's why you should subscribe. But there are some things where obviously we're trying to read into the situation, and maybe we're reading in more than it's there. I can't, again, I can't speak to the personality of Barclay Goodrow. I can only look at his mannerisms when he's playing and draw conclusions from that.
Well, and I think too, you're talking about maturing and stuff like that. I think with both Kevin LeBanc and Barclay Goodrow, I think the fact that they both got sort of a bigger role with the team, I definitely think help move things along. I mean, Joe Thornton, when Joe Thornton went down last year, Kevin LeBanc was sort of acting as the pseudo, power play quarterback, and that's it's a lot of responsibility, especially for a young player. And, you don't really have the luxury of being immature when you're in that kind of position. And same thing with Barclay Goodrow. As much as I think letters on sweaters are stupid, like Barclay Goodrow wore an A with the Barracuda. Like, you don't take that lightly. And even then last year, when he had to shift to play center after going his whole life with never playing center, it's again, one of those things where you have to be mature. Do what you can to help the team win. And surprisingly enough, despite being a very natural winger, he's probably the best face-off guy outside of Thomas Hertl, no?
Yeah.
I think so. There's a lot of Kevin LeBanc's game that I like right now. I think, like I said, I still think he has way above average playmaking skills. There are parts in his game that I don't like. I think he needs to be a little stronger on the puck, though. And he needs to stop listening to DeBarn making stupid drop passes. But overall, I still think Kevin LeBanc is a net positive for this team. He's one of the guys where I think he gets way more hate than he deserves. And I think there's just far too much focus on this team's bottom six.
Yeah.
When we need to look above it for the real issues.
Hockey Jerk, I think you brought up a good point about the letters. I mean, sometimes the letter makes the man, the whole title thing. The title doesn't make the whatever, you know what I'm talking about. But Barclay Goodrow, he really kind of stepped his game up once he got the letter and took ownership, because that was a challenge by the Sharks to say, all right, you want to act up on the ice and you think you're better than everybody? Prove it. Here's an A. Go show us right now. And he did, and now he's on the NHL roster. And Karpat Oulu in the Finnish Liga did the same thing with Jonas Donskoi. Jonas Donskoi, from people I've spoken with, who I really should get back in touch with, back in Finland, way before he was ever on the Sharks' radar, Jonas Donskoi was a very immature 21-year-old kid who he thought he was the shit and acted up all the time outside of the rink. So they threw a letter on him and said, go be a leader. And he did, and he made his way to the NHL. Sometimes you have to put the player in that situation and say, take the ball and run with it if you think that highly of yourself. Having a chip on your shoulder is not a bad thing. Having a huge chip on your shoulder is a bad thing, but having a chip, not necessarily a bad thing.
No. I mean, you want to compete, right? Like,
yeah.
and if you're gonna be given the ball, don't go home with it.
That's right.
Yep. If you're gonna get the ball, throw it at the enemy's head and knock them out.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, hockey's a weird place, and we're just living in it. But I don't know. I mean, other than that, I think we've probably rambled on long enough. Obviously, thanks to everyone who stopped in to say hello and interact with us in the chat. If we didn't get to all your questions, I apologize. We do try to keep it as interactive as possible without completely derailing the show, obviously. It's cool, and we hope to do this again very, very soon.
That's shout. For
sure. Final thoughts, guys.
Well, here we are again at the conclusion of another cast. I think the three of us can all agree that we hope to be on sooner than 4 weeks from now.
Right. We'll be on Tuesday when the Sharks have a new head coach.
Oh, man. Breaking live from the scene.
Ian checking in from Tim Hortons.
No, I mean, like we were saying earlier, I mean, it's definitely, if you're a Sharks fan right now, and obviously we all are, it's a scary time. Like, this team is better than it's probably ever been, and they can't seem to win a game or even score a goal. But like I said, I think ultimately long term, I think they're going to figure it out. Whether that's you fire the coach or you trade somebody or you scratch Melker Karlsson, I'm not sure. But I think one way or another, I think team is going to figure it out. And I'm standing by my season opener prediction. The Sharks are going to win the division. It is what it is. It's not. What is the expression? It doesn't matter how you got there. It just matters that you got there.
No.
Something along those lines.
Yeah.
Yep.
Pittsburgh Steelers were awful back in like 2007 or whenever it was. They barely were a 500 football team, and then they won the Super Bowl.
And
they were favored to be the Super Bowl champs going into the season anyway.
And speaking of Pittsburgh, Jessica is invited to talk about the Pittsburgh Penguins with me. No, I'm just kidding. But you can follow me on Twitter at @hockey_jerk. If you like listening to me talk, then you'll love reading my tweets. You know what? Follow me on Twitter. That's all I have to say.
Kevin.
Well, first off, based on the intro, apparently I'm not going to get the announcing job for the Barracuda when Aaron Fonseca moves on, because Hockey Jerk is.
You know what? I am 100% comfortable in my own skin to say that you are better than I am. So if you are allowed to announce every podcast for the rest of time.
It's okay. It's okay. It was pretty funny. But now the gloves are off now. And then the other thing for Hockey Jerk is I'm looking at your avatar right now. So you shaved your Movember mustache, I see.
Yeah, I did. It looked, I had to decide between the paper hat and the mustache, and I decided I went with the paper hat.
Nice. Well, I am now a freshly clean shaven Kevin Lacey at Kevin Lacey 22 with a fresh new Victor Arvidsson Milwaukee Admirals jersey. Look at it. It's beautiful. It's glorious, and I love it. So anyway, follow me on social media. I will be at the Sharks game on Wednesday, and I am trying to get to the Barracuda game on Monday, but we will see what happens there. But yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. Over to you, Ian.
Not much to add to that. Obviously, you can follow me at Ian Blogs Hockey on the Twitter machine. The hashtag, the Twitter handle, it's a total lie because I don't know the last time I've written anything because I had no time. Other than that, subscribe to the show if you like what you heard. Tell 2 friends. Because we like to do this. We like to talk Sharks. We also like to talk other hockey things too, though. As you may have noticed. So sometimes maybe your friend isn't a Sharks fan, but they might find our banter about other teams' nonsense interesting.
Actually, if they aren't a Sharks fan and they listen to us talk, they might believe us more than a regular Sharks fan would. Like, hey, these guys know what they're talking about.
Or
follow them and subscribe.
Yeah. But that's it. You know what? Hopefully next show we can be somewhat more positive when it comes to the Sharks. I would really like that because this is getting old and it's frustrating. And I feel for you, my fellow Sharks fans. We will come out of the end of this together, good or bad. We'll still be here recording. So stick with us and hopefully everything does get better and rainbows and sunshine and lollipops.
I have a question for old time's sake to close us out.
Okay.
Between now and our next show, will a coach be fired?
God, I hope so.
We need something to talk about.
God, I hope so.
Yeah, until freaking Patrick Waugh becomes the head coach of the San Jose Sharks, and then I quit.
At this point, honestly, and I know that I'll get flack for this, and some people will cheer me. I might not stop with the coach.
We're gonna fire the assistant coach.
We're gonna fire Steve Spott too. No, I might go above the coaching staff, but I think you'll end up with a situation like Philly where dude gets promoted out of his position, and yeah. But that's a topic for another podcast. Have a good night, guys. See you later.